Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lizard Brains podcast. I'm your host, DJ Alessandrini. I'm joined by my co-host, Tom O'Gorman. Tom, how are we doing?
I'm good.
Good,
I'm good today. How are you?
I'm feeling pretty good now that I'm home, chilling. I'm sitting in the podcast studio with my good friend Tom. We got an audience of people live in the
You're
Discord.
perfectly clean podcast studio. It looks beautiful.
Thanks, Tom. The audience knows otherwise.
How does mine?
Tom and I are masters at camera angles.
Yeah, if you didn't know, we're on video now on YouTube, the Lizard Brains Network, which means we have to look presentable and have presentable settings.
It's
every
much
single
different
week.
than how it used to be. Also,
Yeah.
all right, Tom. We just got clearance that we can do the podcast. Like basically, well, it's not like that we couldn't do the podcast, but we're gonna have the ability to have a spot in the media car for one lap to have
Yeah.
podcast equipment. So, are we gonna try to stream on like a video to the Discord every evening when we're trying to record one of these, or
No, we're not doing it in the evening. There's no way.
not the evening, but like we'll do it in the like the lunchtime portion.
I think we're talking about one lap. I think we can promise audio updates every day during one lap, whether we're on camera or not. Different topic. I don't know how we're gonna do camera. Do you have a way to do camera?
Oh, like a webcam on a computer?
Yeah, that might look a little.
I don't think
crappy.
we'll be able to upload it to YouTube. That'd be too much.
No, I think we should aim for just daily updates from the paddock between sessions 1 and 2 every day at the track.
Okay, hold on. Now I just thought about, because we're trying to like synchronize the podcast and YouTube. It would probably make sense to at least have like a webcam shot with the audio and upload that to YouTube. I don't know if my laptop's
True.
enough for like screen recording though.
That's why I think we should guarantee audio.
We will.
And then if you get video, y'all are lucky.
Yeah, we'll do our best. Yeah.
I might honestly we're gonna have so much to talk about with one lap in a couple weeks, guys. But for now, DJ's coming into his first. I'm coming into my fourth. I promise you, the only guaranteed downtime for something you can actually just like schedule is between the first session and the second session in the day. So let's say 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's the only time you can guarantee relatively safe that you can do something.
And that's only assuming if we qualify near each other.
We will. I'm confident in that.
But if we did it, it throws a wrench in this whole plan.
It would, but it would still give us worst case. There's no way you're going to be like last.
No.
So worst case, it would give us like 11 p.m. to 1 p.m.
Oh, okay.
No, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Yeah,
We'd still
that
have
should
some
be good.
hours. Yeah.
That should be good. I'm curious, like, because I'm not driving every day. Neither are you. Are we? We gotta like sit down and like compare our schedules of like what tracks we're driving. Are you driving every track, or how are you and Salil like splitting it?
We're sharing every track except one each. So I'm doing all
Gotcha.
of Pit Race. He's doing all of Hastings. Which, I mean, that's next week. We could spend next week's episode talking about that.
Okay, all right. I'm all excited, guys. I'm freaking jazzed.
I can't wait either.
Oh, it's gonna be so much fun.
But how was your week this week?
Let's see. Trying to remember what happened. We did the school, which we're going to talk about in today's episode. And then on Sunday, so we did the autocross school, and then I hurried back. I left like 2 hours early, and then I hurried back to do my band concert. And I'm gonna have to say, I walked in like 15 minutes before that thing started. I didn't realize how much like a mental prep of like sitting on stage and being like, there's an audience out there, and like doing like the warm ups and all that, how much that helped me. Dude, my freaking heart was racing for those like first 2 songs. Ooh, got an adrenaline rush from it, dude.
Were you doing your warm-ups in the car?
I was trying, but like,
or whatever you do?
I was trying, but it like literally wasn't working. Oh, and then I made a terrible mistake. It's good that I sit in the back, because you're supposed to wear a black shirt with black pants. And when I was packing in a hurry to leave, I grabbed Christine's black pants. So I put like one leg in, was like, nope, this isn't going to work. So I had to
It's
wear
funny.
jeans. So like I like hid behind one of my bandmates as like I walked up on stage. So like if anybody in the audience was like really paying attention, they
Yeah.
wouldn't see that I was wearing jeans and everyone else was wearing black pants. I felt like a little bit of a goober, which I think added to my adrenaline hit like in the beginning of the concert. But after the adrenaline wore off, I feel like the concert went really well because I don't know if you guys have ever played an instrument or not, but when you got adrenaline like flowing through your system, like it's the accuracy isn't as exactly where it should be when you're playing an instrument with air coming out of your body. So
Yeah. So that just made me think, translate that to motorsports and how people who are either rushing to get to the event, late to get to grid, like just the people who are constantly behind, or that one day that you're also behind and you're just like, that's the worst. Like you're basically doing that in a performance setting instead of a competition setting, but still, like getting that time to like assimilate is everything.
yeah, and everyone's a little different. Like Tom, like you like to hang out outside of the car, mingle in. That's like how you get into your space. Other people, you'll see like they pull up into grid 10 minutes early and they're just sitting in their car the whole time. Like it's literally whatever like you need. But like it's
Straight
important to
ahead.
find out whatever you need. I do like a hybrid. I like to like go around, mingle. I like to talk to the people that I'm going to be starting near. Just to like build up some like camaraderie, like, hey, let's go have some fun, stuff like that. So it's not like like too much right in the beginning. Um,
Yeah.
you just like show like your good intentions, like, hey, we're gonna have a lot of fun like in this race. Like let's keep it clean, especially since it's not my car.
Yeah.
please please don't boop my not car. Um, yeah, and then
Please don't boop, not my car.
yeah, that's what I meant to say.
There you go. There you
I
go.
This podcast has to be a little bit of a struggle today because for some reason talking is difficult for me today. So I don't for whatever reason.
Dude, at okay, so the school this weekend, we're gonna talk about more in a bit. I wore my helmet for 6 hours straight, and I talked probably like the whole time because I talk too much when I'm instructing
My voice was
sometimes.
tired.
My brain was tired. I was out of words. I was trying to
I was
socialize
out of
after the event
words.
was done. I couldn't come up with other words. I was talking to, I think, Bartek Borowski, and we were trying to just like catch up on life or so. Like we haven't seen each other in a little bit, and I was mixing up like where the verbs and nouns and adjectives go in my sentence. It was just loop to loops with. It was bad.
I
I
remember
was like, I'm so sorry.
it was toward the end because it was so rapid fire. Like us jumping out of this car into that car, and then it was like the pace was actually like way faster than I thought it was going to be for like how busy we were going to be.
Yep.
Um, and then I remember somebody finished a run, and I had thoughts of like what the low hanging fruit was and like the thing they should be focusing on for the next run. But then like coming up with those words, this was like 5 hours in or whatever. Coming up with words was like I had to like take a deep breath and be like, all right, you got this. Just relax. Think of words. Now you're
Give
going to
yourself a pep
speak
talk.
those words. Like because it was yeah, I mean, because coaching is difficult, right? Like you're taking complicated uh you're taking things that are complicated and then trying to put those into words in a way that somebody else is going to take away the correct things that you're trying to explain. And then
Yep.
you're trying to read. You can't see their whole face because they're wearing a helmet. Only read their eyes, whether they actually understand you or not. Um, you encourage like they like talk back if they're asking questions that helps you understand that they understand. Like that's super useful. Um,
Let me ask, do you ever ask them to re-explain what their takeaway from your talking was?
yeah, I do. And
Because I've found that super powerful.
right, because then if they took away the wrong thing, then you can like fix it right away.
Yeah.
Uh, Rolf is asking if what advice do you had for Bartek?
No, we weren't talking about. I had clocked out. We weren't talking about driving anymore.
Clocked out. Tom,
But if
Tom,
I did have a piece of advice for Bartek, I would say, what would I say? What would I say? Yeah, he's fine. He's doing
is he
fine.
still driving an E Street Miata?
He is. Yeah.
The advice is drive more fun cars.
He has a shifter cart. Guys, you want to
Okay,
hear about a shifter cart?
Tom. Before we jump into the like, because we the the topic for today is we're gonna talk about the because we a lot of times we were having like the same conversations just with different people in the autocross school. So we thought it would be cool if we shared what those conversations were to everyone who
Yep.
wasn't one of our students. So that's gonna be the topic. But before we jump into that, Tom, shifter cart?
Yeah. Were you done? Were you done with your weekend? I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh, uh,
Your concert
oh,
was good.
and then Sunday, I woke up being like, "Oh, I'm a little aimless today. I'm not sure what I should do." And I was like, "Screw it. I'm just gonna iRace a whole bunch today," which I totally did. I iRaced a ton. But then like at like 10:30, I found out there was an autocross event like 5 minutes from my house. I could have went to that, but I didn't. I didn't know it was there and it was happening.
You know what would help?
A calendar.
A calendar of events.
Dang it.
Come on.
Gah.
Bummer. Did you go over and hang out or at all, or you just
No,
hung out at home?
I just kept iRacing.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
My parents also live from if you're in Ohio area, my parents live like 2.5 minutes from Trader's World, that little site like northern Cincinnati. And I would find out sometimes when I was still living with them, but racing all the time, it would be like 10:30 in the morning, 11:30 in the morning. And I'd be like, oh, there's an autocross 2.5 minutes from my house. And sometimes I just wouldn't go because what are you gonna do? I
Are
don't
you
know. There's like
you're gonna bug people?
my day's
It's
already an off day.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
also, it's not like you're gonna drive. Like, what are they gonna do? Like, "Oh, we'll throw you on the entry list." And it's like, that seems like a lot of trouble. And then also, like, what? Am I gonna find a car with, like, 5 minutes notice? Like, that's not gonna happen either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which don't take this advice. This is bad advice. Go to every event you can if you're trying to make this motorsport stuff happen. Go to the events, but we're lazy.
But if
I
I would've
guess
known if
sometimes.
I would've known about the event, then I would've probably went to it. I'm just it wasn't like an SCCA event, it was just, like, some other event that was there, so I didn't have a way to like, it just isn't on my radar of, like, things that are happening. But, one of
Yeah.
our friends posted a picture, and I'm like, "I know that parking lot." I was like, "Where are you? What's going on there?" So but, yeah, that was my weekend. Oh, and my air conditioner broke, so I troubleshooted that on Sunday.
Oh, ugh.
Yeah, like, for the house. I had to troubleshoot a house, which, surprisingly is very much like a car.
I
So
get to
houses and
troubleshoot a
cars are like the
house.
same thing. Yeah, I had to troubleshoot a house. I think it's a capacitor. The multimeter said it was the capacitor. I just got a new one, and I'm going to install it and see that it works.
Is it a flux capacitor or
It's not the flux capacitor. It's just a capacitor. I can't time travel with it, unfortunately. Uh
just the conditioning capacitor?
The conditioning.
Got
No,
it.
it's just I don't know, they all have capacitors, and apparently that's like the thing that fails on them. I watched a 15-minute YouTube video that made me an expert in HVAC. So, I mean, there's obviously no Dunning-Kruger curve here. I know everything there is to know. So I'm gonna go fix it and definitely not die of electrocution and, be good to go.
At least your brakes can't fail. Like, what's gonna happen? You're not gonna like go smash into a wall.
Well, you could get electrocuted. It's three-phase power going into it, but I have experience when I worked in power
Just
plants and stuff how to deal with that. So
just wear rubber gloves. You'll be fine.
yeah, you'll definitely be good with rubber gloves. Actually, with the voltage that this is, you'd probably be fine with rubber gloves. But I used to work in like super high voltage cabinets, so and the procedures for that were a little different. You have to get like suited up in case there was an arc, because if there was, you would
Yeah.
just catch on fire because it was so hot. Yeah, like you would catch on fire.
You have lived so many lives.
Haven't I?
You have. I've literally been doing the same thing for 15 years. You're like, I used to work in this electrical factory and I worked on water equipment for medical supplies and I played Halo professionally. And by the way, I'm an expert at the trumpet and also let's do racing.
Well, that's you basically summed it all up. I don't think there's anything missing there.
Yeah.
Oh, I used
Oh,
to
and,
be
and
a
manage a 13-year relationship or whatever it is.
yeah, I used to be assistant superintendent on a golf course too, so I know a lot about grass.
I'm afraid to derail this further, but what does a superintendent do at a golf course?
I was on the greens department. You like take care of the grounds. Like you know, all the fairways and the rough and the greens, and they all have like different processes to like have the grass at a specific height, and you do a lot of maintenance, like you'll aerate greens, which is basically like punch a bunch of holes in it and then put like sand down so the greens like are really smooth and fast, and you'll roll them, and there's like a bunch of different stuff that you do. Like in the summer, we would spot to save water because we pulled water out of a pond. We would spot water with a hose. So there was specific areas on greens that would need. Jake said the greens department sounds like a bunch of stoner kids. Um, uh, yeah, there was just there was a lot of work to do. So it was, what was cool about that job, Tom, is every day you came into work. This is before I was assistant superintendent, but when I was just on the greens crew, you'd come in, you had no idea what you were gonna do every day, and it was like you could have done like one of like 20 different jobs like every day, and you just like, oh, I guess I'm doing this today. Oh, I guess I'm doing this today. Like there was something different like every single day.
Be fun. I guess I googled it. I didn't really know what superintendent meant. I thought that was like a school thing, but it turns out it's just a person who manages or superintends an organization or activity. So we're technically superintendents of the Lizard Brains podcast,
I guess we are.
which I didn't know.
Especially when we do game night, which we do need to do another one soon. I'm itching for some what was
We
that?
do.
What was that golf like Rocket League game that we were playing? I forget even what that was called.
Turbo Golf Racing.
Turbo Golf Racing. We need to play some more Turbo Golf at some point.
True. Well, we have 2 more months until our 100th episode. So we should definitely do one between now and then.
Yes, definitely.
Deal.
But yeah, that was my weekend and my resume via audio. What about
Yeah.
what about your week, Tom?
Guys, I drove a go-kart.
Woo!
I was okay, I got to talk about this. So we, like I said, we have our Lizard Brain school this weekend, and I got the impression anyway that there was someone who had just bought a go-kart, a shifter cart. Oh, go-kart sounds silly. They had bought a shifter cart after driving a Audi S3 and then other stuff prior to that. And I got the impression that they wanted to sign up for coaching, but that's not a great, like, how are you going to like ride along on a shifter cart or something? So I co-drove. I stayed after our school on Saturday, and I co-drove with this guy Ian on Sunday. And I have never driven a shifter cart. And honestly, like my takeaways from the shifter cart, I was like all over the place because I had a unique day of autocrossing that I haven't had in a long time, because autocross is autocross, but this was like pretty different. So I decided, I made a note. I was like thinking about it, and I was like, okay, I need to tell this story and a reaction as if I'm like 17 and I just found autocross. It's my second year, and I'm like, everything is cool, everything's exciting, and then I need to do another reaction as if like as me now, the like seasoned and jaded race car driver. Because they're going to be very different, and they're both super important. Okay, so have you driven a shifter cart, right? Yeah,
I took
that was the
one
noodle
run,
neck thing.
one run in Larry McLeod's, and that's where Noodle Neck came from. Because
How many gears did you use? Do you remember?
dude, it was a blur. I have no idea. I think maybe I got to like fifth. But it was kind
Okay,
of
I
a
was gonna say
tighter. It was kind of a tighter course.
They have 6 gears. So yeah, okay, that checks out. All right, so let me do 17-year-old Tom reaction. Dude, it's so fast.
It's so fast, dude.
It's so fast. I cannot believe when it's in its window of power and it's like up on the pipe and you're like in the right gear, and it just like it's like VTEC. If you've never driven a shifter cart, they have to like get in the power band, and they call it like on the pipe, I guess. I don't know why they call it that. But like, of the 13,000 to 15,000 RPMs you have to work with, they don't really come on the power until you're like, let's say 10,000 RPM, something. So you have to keep it in that window. And when it's in that window, oh my God, it's like warp speed. It's so fast, especially if you're coming from being like decelerating or off the pipe. And then the cart like hits its power band, and it's just like, I didn't have any noodle neck problems. Luckily, I was like, it felt pretty natural, but they're just so fast. And I can imagine if you haven't felt that level of acceleration, the only things I can compare it to are like
Like a GT3
electric
Porsche.
cars,
Oh yeah.
electric cars, and like high torque, low gear cars.
Now
like
hold on.
like 700 horsepower in second gear, not in fifth.
Yeah.
You know, that like real oomph.
Look,
Go ahead.
I gotta know. Did you look down when you launched the cart?
No, of course not.
You just kept your head up straight and you weren't looking at the sky?
No, but I have. Okay, so let me get through my excited portion first.
Okay.
Okay, it's so fast. I I'm trying to remember the other parts that I got to, like the impression about like things that I hadn't seen in a long time. So obviously being down at cone height is pretty interesting. I didn't really have any problems with that, but I do remember when I drove a C-Mod car, which is a Formula Ford for the first time. It was a very strange feeling to have autocrossed for a year, 2 years, or whatever it was at the time, and like see the course from cone level instead of above. Because when you talk about, look, dude, if you think Sea of Cones, listener, dude, if you think Sea of Cones is a thing in a car, it's like really, really difficult to decipher a course from eye level or from
Yeah,
ground level.
it is a lot different.
From ground level. So I hadn't done that in a while. That was kind of cool. Um, and also like the lack of weight transfer that you have in a cart or a car with no weight. This reminded me a lot of the Formula Ford that I autocrossed as well. When you're transitioning the car through the course, and there's very little suspension travel or weight to like move, or in the sake of a cart, case of a cart, zero suspension. Everything happens. It's hard to verbalize, but it happens both instantly and then like on a scrub radius of the tire. So you're in this much tighter relationship with what the tire is doing,
Yep.
because there's not as much damping through the entire system back up to you, and then back from what you request down to the ground.
A more direct
Um,
relationship with the tire is like literally the perfect way to word it.
yeah. So you're like, at first everything feels like it happens instantly because you're like, oh, there's no suspension travel or weight moving or anything, but then you realize like you're dealing with the scrub of the tire across the surface a lot more. So that's probably boring if you haven't done it, but it's pretty cool. Okay, so now what?
I know you're like, it's pretty cool.
Like, I don't, if you haven't done that, it's just a bunch of words that mean something's cool.
Well,
I don't know how
you
to.
also have to wait for like the inside rear tire to kind of like get lifted off the ground for the thing to like actually start turning.
True, but you also, I found myself driving it with a little bit of slip angle. What I felt was a little bit of slip angle all the time. So instead of like trying to hike the inside tire and rely on the steering wheel or like jack the thing around the corner, just like kind of turn it in and get it into a little bit of a slip, and then like neutral steer through the corner as best you can.
Yeah, you were well, it doesn't have to be like off the ground. It just has to be unloaded to the point where the inside can move at a different speed than the outside, right?
Right. Yeah. So that part. Okay, now we're getting into like the current Tom version.
Okay.
Okay, current Tom spent most of the day very frustrated.
Tom,
Very
you're out of
frustrated
control.
because there was a bunch of stuff that went into this. So Ian had just bought the cart. He bought it from a road racing guy that had like 12 of them that he managed for other people and also for himself. And he had taken it to the kart track, like a real track, multiple times before taking it to an autocross. But this was his first time autocrossing it and my first time autocrossing it as well. So we were like learning in unison. He had a little bit more information than me, but only since he bought it, I don't know, last fall or something. I think he said he'd taken it out twice or three times. So that's important because he had not changed anything really about the cart, and I think it was still geared for road racing because we only used 3 gears, and I never even
Oh,
touched fourth.
that would be really
So
tough because you basically wouldn't be able to keep it in power.
yes, so once we got, oh, yeah, he just joined. Ian, we're talking about this weekend. Hello. So the hardest part to start with, once the tires got warm, which he drove first, I drove second. So basically, these tiny little tires heated up right away. The cart was hooking up so much that we like couldn't get it off the line in the power band, and both of us wasted like 5 of our 7 runs just trying to get the thing to get off the line without bogging. And guys, when I say bogging, it's like VTEC mixed with an 80s turbo, mixed with like forgetting your handbrake is on. It's like there's literally nothing, and you're just sitting there like farting off the line for like seconds and seconds and seconds, feeling like an idiot. While all the course workers are watching you and all the people at the line are watching you, like, man, the people in the go-kart suck. But then it hits the pipe and didn't say that. Then it comes up on the pipe and you're like, rock it away. And then as long as you keep it in that power band, it's fine.
Wait,
But like,
I need to hear more about how the cart was hitting the pipe.
yeah. No, the problem was it wasn't.
No, it wasn't hitting the pipe. If it was hitting the pipe, it might have had a little bit more energy, is what you're saying.
Right. So that was like the root of my frustration to start with was just trying to get it moving in a way that didn't immediately ruin the run. It was just like, because as soon as you launch and you're just like out of the power band and farting along for multiple seconds, you're just like, man, my run's gone already. Like my best time of the day was a 43. Most of our times were in like the 47s, 46s, because we would lose 3 to 4 seconds if we messed up the launch.
Yeah.
So both of us finally got the slip down with like a little bit of clutch, which is on your left hand. Oh, excited 17-year-old Tom had another realization. I thought you had to use the clutch on your left hand and pull the shifter with your right every shift, but it's like a sequential, so you don't have to do that. Okay.
Wait, what?
I thought you had to use the clutch every
Oh,
shift,
every shift. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
and you don't.
So you just jam gears.
I was always
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
I literally always thought these guys were driving with like their left hand clutching
Like
from somehow like
on the wheel, and then also,
yeah.
that sounds like magic.
I don't know how I got to that conclusion, but it sounded impossible.
Yeah.
So when I found out I didn't have to do that, I was much
You're
happier.
very relieved. You're like still like trying
Yeah.
to like do the gymnastics in your head. You're like, how do I do this? I'm sure as soon as
Yeah.
I'm there doing it, it will come to me. But right now, I can't think of
Yeah.
it.
Yep. So I was like I've shared on this podcast before. I don't love feeling feeling like I'm bad at stuff. And when I feel like I'm bad at stuff, my instinct is to like shrivel in. Like I want to disappear. Or I don't want to be like seen being bad at stuff. I just like that was a little tough, but it was nice to like both of us have the same problem. So we were kind of working through it together. Like how are we going to get this? And we figured out the clutch slip and stuff. But then also because it had what I believe are probably closer to like road racing gears instead of autocross gears. And especially talking to other people since where they're like, yeah, you should at least be hitting like fifth. And we were at the top of third. I was like, maybe this is like a tougher scenario than I realized. Where like, because keeping it in the power for some of the slower corners it was really hard. It was just like, how is it so hard?
I might be wrong, but I think they just changed like literally just the sprocket on the axle, and like that's all that's changed.
Okay, car guy.
Just saying, and that might be the only thing that changes. So you go from you go to a larger sprocket because that would change the gear ratio, so it's shorter.
Right.
Yeah.
That. I mean, yeah, that checks out. So I assume it would be the same as changing like final drive, right? Where you're just like shortening it up.
Yep.
Just bring everything down. So we sort of were talking about that a little bit, but just the difficulty of getting it moving, keeping it in the power enough to have some sort of effective run that I knew if I drove it well enough, that I was like really stuck on that. I was having a hard time with that. But by the end, we ended up getting it like to the point where we could get it off the line, and we had our shift points down, and the two of us, dude, I can see where a co-driver with a cart is so important because the variables of shifting and all this stuff was like, there was way more to talk about after the run, I feel like, than any other car I've had in a long time. And it was super fun to have somebody to like have that back and forth with and talk about what we were trying, what we were doing. Like I was telling Ian, I feel like a lot of the last co-drives I've had for the last couple of years, I'm so confident in what I'm doing. It's less of a dialogue and more of a like, maybe the other person asks me questions and I answer them, but I don't tend to rely on the banter as much. And maybe I should. But this was like totally a good back and forth dynamic. It was really fun. Even if it was a little frustrating in the moment sometimes.
Tom.
What else? What?
Do we need to get a Lizard Brain shifter cart and me and you just co-drive this at events?
Honestly, okay, my last takeaway, I would either sign up for like a year, like a season or more to get used to one of these things, or I would never I don't need to drive one again on purpose because it felt so foreign to me. Like I've driven carts before. I've driven indoor carts and I've driven like a tag cart, which is like a non-shifter.
It's like a Rotax.
But high power thing. Yeah, something like that. And they just don't like make a lot of sense to me in the same way that like a bike doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I feel like I need to spend like a really high investment, like very intentional amount of time with a cart if I'm going to like drive a cart. Otherwise, I feel like if I just hop in a cart every 6 months or even like like I need to dedicate myself to learning it and getting better at it and understanding it, or I need to acknowledge like I'm not going to be able to hop in a cart and just be like great. Because I was like 20th on PAX, I think. It wasn't like I didn't do a good job. I was not that fast.
Oh, you ruined your autocross rating or whatever.
Maybe. No, that SSC car did that. Shit.
So, here's my question to all the karters out there that do autocross. I love autocross, but karting seems like it would be so much more fun on a karting track with other people like with similar equipment and you're like racing against them like wheel to wheel in a cart. Like why autocross the kart? It seems like it's a
Email
lot of
us.
yeah, please no, please do. Cause like it seems like it's a lot of work because they're kind of finicky. And like, yeah, you're going really fast, but like I don't know. Like I wanna know like what is it about the kart and autocross where you're not just like going to like your local kart track unless you don't have one, then that kind of makes sense, right? Um, but I feel like there's probably enough kart tracks within like a 2-hour window where like you'd probably be able to get some kart racing in, and I'm sure there's a class there. Ian's typing right now. I'm curious what Ian's gonna say because it's like maybe you're like, oh, kart would be fun, and you already have friends in autocross, so like that, like you're just like, oh, that would be a lot of fun, and then you can. Okay, he literally just said you can do both. Uh, so I guess like you just like add to the events that you're doing, but I think there's a lot of people who just exclusively drive their carts in an autocross setting. So
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd be curious to hear too. I'd love to like now I've been meaning to message him. I want to talk to Larry McLeod about karting now because he's the current Mr. K mod, right? Like he wins nationals and that and stuff, and he's
yep.
like friends of ours. So I want to talk to him about. I kind of want to just send him my video and be like, "How bad did I do?" Because like watching it back, I'm not that proud of what I did, but it was also all I could do in the moment, which is where I'm saying like if I wanted to like do this, I would need to sign up for like a lot of it.
Yeah.
Um, but to your point, at the end of the day, it almost didn't feel like the autocross that I know. Like autocross to me is very unique within motorsports, and this felt like a little bit different to autocross in the same way that like ice racing is not autocross.
Yeah.
It's like a different thing but similar.
I,
Like you're doing a route point to point, going as fast as you can, but it's not the same thing. It was like that. Um,
we're like your
not that it was
interest
not that it was worse or better or less fun or more fun. Like it
your
was just
interest
different.
to learn it is just because it was different. You're like, that's a completely different thing.
Well, and also it was fast and fun and like all of it's awesome.
Yeah.
But I found myself watching some of the big cars go through the course, knowing what that felt like, be like, I don't really feel like I'm doing that. Or maybe I don't know how to think of it yet. And maybe I was doing that. And I was just so bad about understanding the cart so completely, like the way I understand a real car, that I just can't relate. I don't know. There's
I
there's
feel like
something to that.
I think the thing that appeals to me, like talking about this, is like, damn, I feel like I got to find my way into a shifter cart for an event because I think the appealing thing for me is that the skill ceiling seems so high, like the skill gap for like newbie cart to like like Larry McLeod cart is like so vast, right? Like there's so much time to leave out there everywhere where like every little bit of scale can like turn into an advantage for you. There's no part like there's a lot of times in SSC where it's kind of like, yeah, we're all gonna set basically the same like sector time through that section because like you're just
Yeah.
you're just turning back and forth. But with the cart, it's like you can always go faster. There's always like a little bit more. What? What are you laughing at?
Yeah, guys, you're just turning back and forth. What are we doing?
Yeah, come on, guys. We're just
You're
like,
just sitting there.
yeah, you're just sitting there turning a wheel. Come on. This is
Not even
a
that hard.
yeah, this is an insight into what DJ was like in the right seat during the school. Just kidding. Guys, it's not even hard.
The last thought I had is it is definitely physical, but it's nowhere near as bad as I thought. I felt fine.
Did you need a rib
So
protector?
guys, I wore Ian's rib protector
Okay.
and that was it. I my elbow was hitting the engine, I guess, the motor a little bit. So I have like a tiny little bruise right here, and that's about it.
Aw.
So
You
don't make me
okay?
sound so pathetic.
Is is it okay?
That's funny. So my takeaway is, guys, drive a cart if you can. It was so fun. It was very challenging. And I have a new respect for carters, I think.
Cool. I feel like
I think that's it.
I feel like I have to get an event in a cart instead of a single run.
You definitely need more than one.
Yeah. Well, one felt like a
Uh,
tease, especially when because did the heel plates come into play like I was talking to you about? You didn't even think about
nope,
them?
nope.
Dude, when I hit the brakes, I would just hit the brakes more because my ass would slide out of the seat into the brake pedal because Larry has like the most like flexible ankles in the history of humans, and I couldn't even touch the heel plates.
The only thing I ever felt with that was like ergonomically was my elbow hitting the engine.
And then it gave you a bruise.
It woosed my
A
elbow.
little bruise.
God.
I'm so sorry,
All right,
Tom.
should we move on to the topic?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, as a reminder, guys, we had our first ever Lizard Brain School. Thank you to the Tri-State Sports Car Club for inviting us out to teach basically a small group of people within a larger test and tune. I wouldn't say there were like 35, 40 cars at the event, right?
Yep, and we had 10 students, which
Yep.
was the maximum for us. I don't honestly,
Yeah,
it should have
a 10
probably
was perfect.
it should have I think it should have been like 8 or 9.
Yes, you're right. 10 was like maximum. 8 would be perfect.
Yeah.
So that's when we say Lizard Brain School, we were like a little portion of a bigger event. But we were talking about after the event because we kept this document full of notes that were like what each driver was either doing or working on, and DJ and I would swap between. We both rode with everybody, and we thought it'd be cool to talk about like the most common takeaways from, or the most commonly discussed things across the entire field of drivers from the school, because we kind of found ourselves talking about the same 4 or 5 things a lot, and then maybe each driver had like another thing that was unique to them. But I found that with coaching in general, there's a lot of the same stuff you're talking about. So yeah, I think we should jump in, right?
Yeah. You want to just start at the top of your little list that you made here?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll just start right at the top. So I think this is a tough thing to coach on the specifics of, but it's a general thing that I find a lot of drivers do, especially like grassroots drivers, especially autocrossers. They drive in a way that feels fast. They drive in a way that it's very abrupt, it's very frantic, and less intentional than it should be. And because it feels so abrupt and so aggressive and so like urgent, it feels like you're going really fast because your body inputs are really fast and everything's really like throwing you around
It
a
feels
lot and
frantic,
stuff.
so you must be going fast.
Right. Because that feels fast, therefore I must be going fast. That must be what I need to do. And then they think, okay, I just need to like do that better. You know, like I just need to make that frantic driving happen better.
I need to be more
And
accurate with my frantic. Yeah.
with my chaos. And that was a common theme with a couple of drivers this weekend, but it's just a common thing that I've seen a lot as it goes anywhere. And instead of that being basically the first thing you work on with that is explaining. I started a little bit differently with everybody, but the conversation is always kind of circling around either the way the weight needs to move around the car, or the way that the car can't handle multiple inputs at once without you like leading it to the next thing. So essentially what it leads to is someone becoming a little bit more efficient and a little bit more effective with the way they're driving the car. Like they move the weight from the brakes to the edge of the car in the corner a little bit better. They pull off the brake a little bit smoother. They get on throttle a little bit smoother. Like things happen in a more fluid motion. And then they think they went slower, and they come across a line, they see a faster time, and they go, "Oh man, I thought that was slower." And you're like, so what I found myself starting to do over the last couple of years is pointing out like you need to reframe what you think fast feels like, because before you thought all of that chaos and all that franticness was like fast. You just did a faster run by slowing everything down, smoothing everything out, moving the weight around the car more effectively. You need to think of that as fast now. And the faster you can reframe your understanding of what fast feels like, the better you're going to be at applying that. Go ahead.
And because it doesn't feel as frantic, you have a little bit more bandwidth to understand, "Ooh, I left a little time there, left a little time here." So then when you
Yep.
go into your next run, you have like a solid like, "Okay, I can push the envelope a little bit more in this section. Oh, I overcooked this a little bit, so maybe I just cool it down a little bit or get a better angle on the cone before or whatever's going to like have you go slower through that section." Because it's not as frantic, uh, you have more bandwidth to take in what the actual like adjustments you want to make run to run are, and that's what makes somebody good at autocross is those adjustments.
Right. Instead of just going, I need to make that
I need to go
frantic
faster.
driving go faster or better. Yeah.
Yeah, better.
Um, I relate a lot to this problem because when I started, I would just literally throw everything at the wall and I would just like drive as fast and hard as I could. And I would have good days and I would have bad days and I didn't know why. So I relate a lot to this one, but I found that to be a common thing Saturday and in the past. It's like readjusting someone's expectations of what fast feels like and then starting to really drill on how to do it. What was yours? What's another one of yours? Oh, excuse me.
The one that kept coming up for me was and it goes to the like managing the weight, but I call it fluffing the throttle. And I got that from I think I was listening to like Ross Bentley's podcast like 4 years ago, and he had somebody on there and he talked about fluff and and basically what fluffing the throttle is where you're on throttle before you're ready to exit the corner, and all you're doing is creating like a sense of security and like safety with the car, because like quarter throttle whatever is going to feel like super safe and stable with the car, but what you're doing is you're pulling weight away from the front wheels, so now the car's not turning as much, right? The car not turning as much feels kind of safe, so you're actually traveling through the corner slower than you could have been with the car like leveraging the adhesion of all four tires rather than just the outside front. Because if you're like just a quarter in throttle as you're going through this turn, then you've pulled weight away from the front, like I already said, and you're only at the limit of adhesion on the outside front tire. The rest of the tires are kind of just like sitting there, like waiting to see what happens next, right? And to extract the maximum performance of the car, we want all the tires on the car doing maximum work. So in order for the car to be doing that, we have to be effectively moving the weight around the edge of the vehicle to manipulate where we need the grip and like where that grip needs to transition into like the next element, which is what makes autocross difficult is because you need to have such control over that weight where the grip is where you need it when you need it in a rapid succession. On racetracks that happens much slower. So there was a lot of conversations about not having fluff, quote unquote, because it creates a stability. I see it all the time. It's a bad habit. So if you're finding that you're kind of fluffy, just catch it. Once you start catching it, you're gonna start noticing it, and then noticing it is like most of the battle to try to get rid of that.
The Gabriel Iglesias fans out there will like that one.
I don't know what that means.
He's a stand-up comic. He's a big guy, and he talks about I'm not fat, I'm fluffy.
Oh. If you're that kind of fluffy,
uh,
no judging, and that's not the weight I was talking about. It was I'm talking about the weight around the edge of the car, not the weight in the
yeah.
driver's seat.
Okay, I had this conversation a lot as well, but I was caught off guard by the way you talked about it. I like the way you talked about it, but I've never thought of it that way because I got in someone's car and I said, "So what have you and DJ? What have you guys talked about
He
so far
said I
today?"
was fluffy.
Yeah, basically, he was like, "DJ said I was fluffing the pedals. He said I kept fluffing the pedals," and to me, that took it as like he's like kind of bopping and playing with the pedals and can't figure out what he wants to do and a little jerky. And I said, "Well, what did he say that means? I've never heard him say that before." And he explained exactly what you just said in perfect like comprehension.
Awesome.
And it clicked like, oh, he's talking about something that I talk about all the time in a different way. The way I talk about it is, I'd be curious when you're listening to this out there, which one resonates more with you? Actually,
I
that
would
might be a
actually be
helpful thing.
curious as well. That would be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So the way I talk about it is those types of drivers are extending the corner. They're extending the time the car is in the corner at expense of what the car can do most effectively at any given time. So instead of like braking to 100% of the capability of the car, getting the corner done, like the amount of time you're relying on the lateral load of the car done, so that you can get the car accelerating back into its longitudinal G, which is a different way of saying move the weight around from the nose to the side to the back of the car. What you're doing by maximizing all of those things in a perfect blend, instead of like fluffing the car and just like letting it kind of sit there in the corner, you're shortening up the amount of time you're relying on the lateral load of the car, which especially I find this with high power drivers. They do it a lot because they try to maintain momentum when the car, like a C6 Z06, for example, or I drove a C8 Z06 this first, or C8 for the first time. Like, get the thing pointed and get it going in its straight line again. Like, maximize the straightaways, minimize the amount of time you're in the corner, so that you're not just like coasting and sitting there waiting on the car to come back to you. So that's interesting. Like, the way we perceive that is super different.
So
To how I describe it makes sense, because what you say makes perfect sense to me. But
I think so. There's a bunch of when I have this conversation, I honestly I have like probably like 4 or 5 ways that I can explain it. So Raul brought
Mhm.
up, maybe I'm not thinking about this right, but wouldn't fluffing be a secondary problem and not the root cause if you're on throttle
that's where
too
I'm at.
soon? I think the problem might be overslowing because so what happens is somebody will take all the momentum out of the car and then they'll be like, "Well, I'm not gonna just, like, sit here and drive under the limit of adhesion," and then they'll get in power and then wait to leave the corner, right? So, to me, that's fluffing as well because they didn't effectively, like, manage the weight of the car. I have another way of explaining where, like, the momentum is coming in, and you can't spend all the momentum. Whatever momentum you have coming into a corner, that's like a currency, and if you spend all the currency before you're ready to leave the corner, well, now you're like now you're broke, and you have to go, like, back to the throttle bank to gain some more, momentum, and if it's before you're ready to leave the corner, then you took the corner slower than you could have, right?
Kind of. But I would disagree with the idea that if you're getting back on throttle too early but not effectively, what I think most people do is they underslow. They don't brake efficiently enough. They don't get the weight forward, and then they stop braking and they go back to a little bit of throttle, or they just turn and they rely on the scrub of the turning, or they wait on just the amount of time it takes for the car to get pointed where they want to go to come back to them, instead of like actually slowing the car down, then creating a little bit of rotation at the entry to get the car pointed to the exit and then go again. And I'm talking specifically with autocross, because autocross is so much important. It's so important to cut distance. If you're just spending time in, I call it purgatory. If you're spending time in purgatory, just waiting on the car to finish a corner, you're slow.
Calling fluff purgatory is literally to me, that's probably the same thing, right? Because you're just
Yeah,
stuck
yeah.
there you're just stuck there waiting, and what
And it means you didn't
happens.
slow enough.
Right. Well, or that you slowed too much and then you had to get on throttle. Like the both of that can happen, right? Where you slow too much, you're like, okay, well, if I keep slowing down, I'm just gonna hit these inside cones. So then you get in power, but you're not ready to leave the corner based on the shape of the corner. So then now you're just sitting there, like keeping the car at the limit of adhesion, but it's like a lower limit than what the car could be doing because now the rear tires aren't doing anything. And then you finally get to a point where you can leave the corner and then you leave the corner. We spent way too much time in the corner when if you like carried a little bit more momentum in, you could have kept the nose planted in and then you can leave. Or if you went too fast, then it's delaying throttle as well. But to me, that's like a different problem, right? Where
Yeah.
you're not going to be on you're not going to be on power to keep the car because like what a lot of people learn is that they'll learn like I need to keep the car at the limit of adhesion and they'll like figure out ways to get it at the limit of adhesion and it will feel the car will feel like it's at the limit of adhesion, but we have to be conscious of where we're putting the weight and what phase of the corner that we're in. If we're in the turning phase of the corner where the front end of the car should be doing most of the work, well then the front end should have most of the weight on it at that point. And then as we're rolling the weight around the edge of the vehicle, preferably the we time it where the weight gets to the edge of the vehicle where it lands at our door handle right as we're getting into power, right? To me that means that we maximized the edge of the vehicle. We maximize the weight around the edge of the vehicle. We maximize the contact patches on the tires if the weight gets to our door handle right as we're getting in throttle. Assuming It's not like a super, super long corner like Carousel or like at Road America or, if it's just like this really long sustained corner, because then obviously it's going to be at your door handle for, a little longer. But most corners, the weight's on the front, you move it to the edge, you're on power. Like that's how most corners are.
Yep. I still think from my all my time instructing autocrossing, the root of people being fluffy or living in purgatory or getting stuck in corners too long is they're not willing to brake hard enough. They don't learn how to effectively use the brake. Then they know they have to turn. So they turn going a little too fast. They're trying to keep the momentum up. So they go back to a little bit of throttle. And then they're in the corner for exponentially longer than they need to be. So we spent, I definitely did. I know we both did spent quite a bit of time working on the style of braking that needs to happen, not only in maximizing the initial application, but then pulling away in a way that moves the weight smoothly and gets you into the corner smoothly, but making the corner as short as possible.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's obviously easier said than done, but I was super pumped how many students like you would have that weight conversation with them, and then you could see it. The first time they would try it, it was like kind of maybe a little bit of a disaster, and then the second time they went out and tried it, it's like, oh crap, it's like they're on the verge of it clicking, and then the third time they went out there, it's like they freaking get it. That was like so rewarding to watch people just like getting it.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing that people got. Sorry, I'm gonna jump around in the thing. Is the people kept approaching the slalom that was on the course, in, like, interesting fashions. I would say it was probably, like, half the people that I rode with would drive they would get to, like, the left side because you wanted to enter the slalom on the left side. They would get to the left side, not make any more space for it, and then just drive, like, parallel to the slalom, kind of in a straight line. So they weren't maximizing, like, the time that they had to create extra space where they could get, like, a better angle around that first cone. Am I explaining this properly?
I'm with you so far, but I was there.
Okay. So it instead of like it was a left-hander turn right before it, and you could keep the right side of the car loaded as you're finishing up this turn. And if you kept that side of the car loaded, you would make extra space to enter the slalom. Because I think a lot of people aren't prioritizing the angle on the first cone that they get and what that means for the rest of the slalom, because the better angle you get on the first cone is going to dictate how much space you have in the rest of the slalom to like actually start driving out of the slalom. If you start the slalom behind, then you're just chasing the car being behind the eight ball throughout the entire slalom, and you don't actually get like a good exit on the slalom, or you don't even get to be able to carry like you talked about the slalom on the course walk, how it's like more of like a rhythm thing. If you don't set that rhythm like right from the get-go, then you end up just kind of chasing the car until it like basically you're just too far behind by the end of the slalom, and you don't even get a good exit and you lose so much time in the slalom. But like that first
Yeah.
cone is pretty critical.
If I could have, the only one of the major changes I would have made to our little program from the weekend is, if it's possible, I would love to have had a separate slalom set up, like 5 or 6 cone slalom somewhere else,
That
that we
would
could
be
just be
awesome.
like, okay, we need to work on the slalom, but we're going to go to that slalom and we're going to drill. We're going to go up, back, up, back, up, back, like a starting line school.
Yeah, that would have been good.
Because I feel like, I mean, slaloms we could do a whole podcast on, but the short version is the first cone sets your position, the second cone sets your rhythm. And if you mess up one of the first two, then you're in management the whole time.
Yep.
But if you can get the good angle on the first cone that you can backside it effectively, meaning you tuck in right behind it the moment you get to it, and then almost immediately turn back to set the rhythm of the rest of the slalom for the second, third. Our course had an 8 cone slalom, so we had like tons of
Back and forth.
rhythm. Yeah, we needed to like set the first cone and then like keep up with it. It was a good school slalom, but it was tough because it was at the very end of a run where someone could already be at their bandwidth like 11 tenths by the time they got to the actual point. But yes, to your point about, oh, I was going to say a little story real quick. So do you remember when Kenton and I co-drove his RX-8 together?
Yeah.
Kenton and I were teammates in IMSA in 2018, but he enjoys autocross. He had a Mazda RX-8 that he would autocross, and we went and co-drove together. And we were running data, and obviously we've been teammates, so we had this good like rapport and dialogue and stuff. And I think it was the second day. There was a slalom on the course that was like pretty critical but very straightforward. And I just like cleaned his clock that day. The first day we were kind of close, and the second day we were not even close. Sorry, Kenton, if you listen. And we spent a lot of time talking about slaloms, and we realized that like his mentality of the slalom was both the common one and I think the wrong one, where someone believes they have to come into the slalom at the kind of critical speed, what I would call like the speed at which you can maintain through the entire slalom. So you come in, you try to hustle the car through the slalom at the same speed all the way through, maintaining it, and then you get out when you're done. And he said he had even gone to like an FIA car control school in Europe or something like that that had like taught him that. So he was trying to do that. He was trying to come in at the critical speed, maintain that speed through the entire slalom, and then get out. And if you're trying to do that and you get it right, you're just lucky. There's literally no way for you to do that. What you should be doing, I swear, I'll
I agree
die
with you.
on that
And
sword.
I have a story during the school to follow up this. So
Right.
go ahead.
What you should be doing is trying to set a speed that lets the weight be very static, front to rear on the entry, get to a steady throttle position that's either the same or building throttle through the entire slalom so that the weight is super manageable, and then build speed through the entire slalom. So you essentially come in slow, you leave fast. You should be building speed through the entire thing to the point that the last cone is like not even part of the slalom. You just drive past it.
Or like you barely miss it.
Or you barely miss it. Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's like not a part of the thing anymore. So I had that conversation with a couple people. I tried not to like waste their time on just the slalom. So like I tended to make the slalom like a lower priority thing, unless it was like their only thing. Like if they had some other fundamental like braking or input thing earlier in the course, I would work on that first because I felt like they had the bandwidth for it. And they had like, this is something they can achieve and then be proud. And then we moved to the slalom. And I did that with basically everybody. But you're right. The slalom thing was that, especially that slalom. If you didn't follow his description, it was basically an outside entry from like over a 90-degree angle into the slalom, but at pretty good speed. So it was like tough to get into. And then it was 8 cones long. So if you didn't get into it right and set your rhythm, you hung yourself.
Yeah.
And that was cool to watch people like comprehend the theory and then apply it.
Yeah. So I brought up the slalom thing to one particular student, and they probably like over exaggerated the angle on the first cone, but then they like accelerated through the rest of it, and they came out and they had like they were on the limiter going across the line. They were never on the limiter before. And they were like so pumped, and they're like, oh, and I like turned, I was like, so that was easier, right? And they were like all pumped. And then so we had a conversation how that's going to be more consistent. And like they were just all excited. They literally couldn't wait to get to the slalom again, to like do it again. And yeah, it was Tom, I had an unbelievable amount of fun at the school. It was very tiring, like jumping in and out of all these cars. Did you happen I don't want to call anybody out. But there was a particular car there that like didn't have like a door panel, and it might have had a V6 swapped into it.
Yeah.
Were you getting like abused riding in that car?
Yes. Yes. I got more physical abuse riding in that car than the cart the next day.
Oh my God.
But we're the instructor, just like get in, don't complain, brace yourself somehow.
There was nothing to hold on to. I'm like, I was literally laughing in the slalom because I was going like whack, 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 whack from like every hard like object in the car. And
Yes.
and we finished, and I was laughing, and I made it very clear like right away. I'm like, I'm laughing because like this car is so ridiculous. Like the car is super cool. It's like it's such a cool car. But like I've never had the experience where I'm in a car and I'm just like getting like literally abused like while sitting in it.
Yeah.
Because it was so hooked up. The car was so hooked up. I couldn't believe the amount of grip it was making.
Yeah. I mean, it's not rude to call it it was just a car build thing. So it was an LFX swapped, so a V6 swapped RX-8 on like 315
I don't think
200 treadwear tires on all 4 corners.
Yep.
It was like, it was cool. It was a cool car.
It was so
but it didn't
cool.
have anywhere to hold on the passenger side. So I know both of us were clunk, clunk, clunk,
the passenger seat was in there purely for compliance. I don't think anybody was intended to sit in that seat.
Dude, I don't know. That would be the best car to ride in for people because they think it's going like 10 times faster.
Yeah, and then they get out with a limp.
Yeah. All right, I've got two more things. This is like the most cliche thing ever, but I spent quite a bit of time talking about like vision and where to be looking on the course because oh my god, it drives me crazy. Saying look ahead drives me nuts. That is the least productive
It
thing to tell
is.
someone to do. Like if you're an experienced autocrosser and you're telling new people to look ahead, like shame on you. Figure out how to say this better and I'll help you right now. This will be the thing I hear about this week. Uh Looking ahead is not just like looking out. That doesn't make any sense. You need to be intentionally looking ahead in a way that gives you an idea of what's coming up next in enough time that you can react to it. No, not even react. You can be ahead of it, right? So I spent a lot of time talking to people about not even talking about, like basically calling out how far ahead I wanted them to be looking at what I wanted them to be looking at through a course, like a run, and then asking them at the end, being like, did you keep up with me? Were you surprised how early I called things out? Like, what did you think of that? And almost universally, people would be like, yeah, you were way further ahead than I thought because I was looking at what's coming up. I was looking ahead, but you were twice the distance ahead that I was. Um, and I think the root of that is maybe not the root of that, but the root of it is that you need to be far enough visually ahead that you can plan ahead and be ahead of what's going to happen, not just react to where you are. So I always tell people like the basic version is when you hit the brakes for a corner, you would need to have already established where the exit of that corner is when you hit the brakes. And then once you're kind of committed to the corner, meaning like the weight's rolled from the nose to the outside of the car, and now you can't do anything about where you are, you need to have already figured out where the entry of the next corner is. Not the exit of where you're going, because you're already going there. Like the next entry. It needs to be that far ahead. And almost everybody that I pointed that out to or had a conversation with was that's further ahead than I thought. But also the other part is as we started working on driver fundamentals that were input based at the car, their vision would fall. They would do worse on that. And then after having a thing kind of fall apart, I would be like, so where were your eyes? Like, were you looking ahead? Had you already found the exit of that hairpin or something? And it was obviously always no. Like I know that answer, and it's not to call them out. It's just to say like,
Just remind them.
by the way, that still is super important.
Yeah.
Um, but the last thing I'll say about that is utilizing downtime on the course to me is so important.
That was my
And
takeaway.
by
I've never thought about so like this is I'll explain it real quick. So
go for it.
we're walking the course with the class of 2024, April 2024, class of April 2024, and
Yeah.
and I've never thought about figuring out where the downtime on the course is and how where you can look from there, just so like you just have a little bit of spatial awareness of what's coming up on the course. I never thought about like actually recognizing where the downtime is on the course walk. So I'm incorporating that into how I drive now. So thank you, Tom. I've never
Cool.
thought about that before of like utilizing the quote unquote downtime, which is just time where like there's nothing immediate of like that needs to be super accurate with the placement of the car. So you
Yeah.
have time to take a glance over at that next section that's coming up after the corner that you're heading toward, or like you're going to be on the brakes for a little while, so like you can literally, instead of like wrapping your head like around the A pillar to see the exit, you can just like glance at the part of the course you're about to drive through because you're going like through a hairpin, and you could see that part of the course as you're braking for the hairpin. Like,
Yep.
yeah, all this like downtime, like recognizing where that is. I mean, that was like my biggest takeaway from the school was you literally talking about that. And I was like, oh my God, I've never even thought about that. So that was super
That's
cool.
that's really cool. Uh, Thanks for saying that. You summed it up perfectly. It's just these spaces on an autocross course, and it's effective on a road course too. But I think road course you can establish so much muscle memory and rhythm, and you can generally see such a more defined space that it's less important. To be honest,
Yeah.
it's not less important, but it's less common to talk about. But on an autocross course, when you have these short little shoots of time where you're just like accelerating towards the next thing, or you're kind of in a corner for a moment, but it's like not really a thing that takes up mental bandwidth. I think your default is to take a moment to like rest mentally. You take a moment to like gather yourself, to slow to like gather where you are. But what you should be doing is planning for what's happening next. And I think instead of having this like really peaky bandwidth thing where it's like I'm in a slalom, I'm peaking out, like I'm maxed out on my CPU or whatever,
Yeah.
and then I calm down for a second, and then I max out again because I'm in a corner, and then I calm down.
Yeah, you just
You
keep it
just become
maxed.
this much more even processing power that you can be aware of what's going on, and you can catch, like, if you go to your next event, if you're listening and you're going to autocross soon, think about like where is the downtime on this course, meaning where is the time that I'm going to have a chance to like scan real quick and pick up something 2 corners ahead even. It's literally, it's mind blowing. I think this is actually something that makes me very strong at autocross.
I
This,
think
I
it
try
is.
to constantly
Like
think about
you
why I'm
said
good at
that.
autocross.
You said that, and I'm like, that's literally part of Tom's secret sauce and why he's like so freaking incredible at autocross. It's like
Very
that.
possible.
Yeah, honestly, like that downtime thing. I think it's gonna unlock some shit for me, Tom.
We're gonna need a rematch in that fastest SSC car then.
Yeah, I'm down.
um, the last one is pretty quick.
Oh,
I
hold
found a
on.
couple.
I had a short story from the school with the vision. So
Go for it.
I was sitting in one of the driver's cars, and I just challenged them. I'm like, you know what? We're focusing on a lot of things right now. This next run, I just want you to put 100% of your bandwidth into what your eyes are doing, and I want the refresh of your eyes, like the refresh rate of your eyes, to be as fast as you can muster. I want you to take in as much information as you can. And then, like, this was probably like the fourth or fifth run that I was in the car. Um, well, so we were coming up to like the fifth or the sixth run, and they set their fastest time. Like they were under the limit sometimes, and they like the car placement wasn't that great, but like they always like there was no delay on what the next element was. Their placement overall was much better like throughout the run. And they weren't focusing on their driving at all. They were literally just focusing on taking information in with their eyes, and they set their fastest run.
Yeah, that's so cool. It's crazy how often that happens at schools. And I think I've been to say this earlier, but I was so grateful to your little caveat about how coaching works at the beginning of the day. Because we started a little frantic with like, okay, we're gonna just like intro and course walk. And you pointed out the whole like you're not gonna see a linear growth. You're not necessarily gonna nail everything the first time every time. You're gonna see regressions sometimes, but that's okay. And I think that's part of it. Is like when you have that hard reset of like just try to take in as much information visually as you possibly can, and then you see this like fastest run yet or this growth. That's like a really good reset.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I try anytime I'm coaching somebody new, I try to have that spiel so they have like realistic expectations where it's like
Yeah.
if I could hit a golf ball like halfway decent, but like it could be way better. When somebody's trying to teach me how to hit that golf ball, like actually swing a club how I'm supposed to swing it, I am going to miss the ball. I am going to shank it. It's going to go 3 feet in front of me. I'm going to swing and then look for it, and it's still going to be on the tee. Like it's going to be awful, right? Because I'm changing a lot of what my muscle memory is and what I'm doing. And
Yep.
coaching driving is the same way. Like you're recognizing this muscle memory that's holding them back, and then you're trying to come up with ways with them, like troubleshooting with them, how to get rid of that muscle memory, and then build in some good habits that can move forward. So if the driver feels like they've plateaued, a lot of times it's like your habits have been good enough to get to where you are right now, but we need to kind of rebuild some of those so like you can go farther than that.
I wonder if it gets annoying. I know it does. I wonder if it gets annoying to have the coach in your seat, right seat. Like you finish the run, you talked about this whole thing and you nail it, and they go, "That was great, but this other thing sucked," and now we're going to talk about that.
I thought about that, Tom, because it was so frantic. And
Obviously, neither of us said it that way. I hope. Well, I hope you
yeah,
didn't. I
no,
didn't.
no, I didn't. I obviously didn't say that, but I would try if they did something really good. I would try to be like, "Oh, dude, you really crushed that like that one part or whatever." But the pace of the day was so fast. That's why I was saying I think like 8 people would have been better. Because then it wouldn't have felt as frantic. There was sometimes where, like, I would legitimately be impressed with how, the driver did on something, but then I would just, like, get right into the problem part of what I saw, and like, I would be like, "Okay, cool, you got your homework, focus on that for the next couple runs? Alright, cool, I'm gonna jump in the next car." And then I'd be, like, typing up the notes on my phone so, like, you understood, like, what we talked about, and then as I'm typing it up, I'm like, I wish I would've told them that, like, they did really good in that slalom because they really did do a good job, and I'm just like, "Oh, it's too late now. I can't run back and be like, 'By the way, your slalom was good.'" Like,
Yeah.
I'm already, like, jumping in the next car.
Autocross is the hardest coaching.
It really is, but
It's
I
because
think I think
it's
this
the
is the
least
only
efficient
way
auto.
this is the
Go ahead.
only way it works.
I think so too. I mean, it is that's the best it gets, no matter what school you're teaching for. Like we sort of did a similar version on a different way of like an Evo school or a starting line school or a solo pro school or like there's not that much you can do. But autocross is such an inefficient format at the end of the day. Like it's just really hard to coach unless you just isolate all the elements like starting line does, and then you still run out of time. I don't know. It's so rapid fire. But the last thing I was going to talk about was relating to that. Like if I just have someone focus on their vision for one run, there were a couple people that were getting to the ceiling of like what was going to be the capability of their time for that day, like lap time. And the two that really hit that point, my note for the next run was like just cut distance. You need to be as close to the cones as you possibly can in the turns, not the slalom. You need to cut the distance, just drive the tightest lines possible. And both times, both drivers set their new fastest times doing that. And it was like a reinforcement of just how important distance in autocross is. Like listeners, people out there, if you ever question whether you should cut distance or not in autocross, always do it. I literally can't think of a time where it's better to not cut distance.
Anytime I thought maybe this is the time where I shouldn't cut distance, I was wrong.
Always, yeah.
Yep.
Same, same.
Yep. Because sometimes it will bait you, like, a good course designer will bait you into something where you're like, no, actually, maybe I should carry a little bit more out here because then I can carry that speed." It literally doesn't matter, just cut the distance.
Right. Or even if or not the course, but yourself. If you're like having a hard time finding like you got 6 runs, I'm on run 5 and I'm like, man, I've been running the same time since run 2. What's going on? Literally just cut distance. Cut everything you can and see if you go faster, because I bet you do.
That's good advice. The last thing that I felt like I was talking about a lot was, seating in hand position, which is more important than people think. So I don't think a lot of people think about it. And then, uh, especially with the hands, uh, and this is a part where I think like a coach or even just a friend to ride with you, is useful because, everyone that had, messy hands, uh, basically, like, where they wouldn't stay on 9 and 3 or, have any kinda, like, reference as far as the spokes, like, their hands would just go, like, every which direction on the wheel to the point where I'm like, "There's no way they know where the center of that wheel is at this moment in time." Um, they wouldn't even know that they were doing that. Like, they'd never even thought about it. Like, it wasn't in their bandwidth to understand what their hands were doing on the steering wheel. Uh, so, like, somebody pointing that out and the way I would phrase this is, like, I don't know if, like, the autocross today, like, right now is the best time to be, like, thinking about exactly where your hands are, because that's gonna detract from, like, all the other things that you're gonna learn today. But maybe on your drive home, you spend, like, 5 minutes music off, just like thinking about where your hands are on the wheel and what it feels like. And you just do this every once in a while. And where your hands are on the wheel, at them staying at 9 and 3 with references of the spokes will become like a much more natural thing. Um,
Yeah.
and I think just people noticing that their hands were doing wacky stuff, I think they got better throughout the day because they would realize that they're shuffle steering and stuff like that. Like and some of the cars, with like the really slow steering racks, I get it. But most of the cars there, 9 and 3 should have been like all that was necessary for like the whole run. So we didn't need to like grab like one side of the wheel with both hands and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have anybody immediately that red flagged that for me, but I did have a couple people say that you had talked to them about that. But also, I think we had of the group of 10, we didn't have any like real new drivers. Like we even had a 15-year-old, but they had been driving enough. It's 17-year-old,
I was gonna say
but they've been
was
autocrossing for
Dude,
years.
I was gonna say if he was 15, he's gonna be amazing. I mean, he was already
Even
really
still,
good. He was super good. Like I'm
yeah,
telling you, I don't want to say anybody's names, but this particular individual, like they're gonna do some stuff. Like the car control and the comfortability and like just the vision already was like so stellar. So yeah, that person is they were seriously impressive.
yeah. But because we had such an experienced group relative to school, like when you do it, like I don't know if you've ever taught an Evo school or a starting line school, but because it's a promoted school only type thing, sometimes you get people it's their first time autocrossing ever.
Yeah.
Period. We didn't have anything like that. So, but it's an interesting comment from Pax in the live chat. Ron Williams is an autocrosser with a bunch of championships, and he shuffle steers. And Bartek Borowski, we talked about before, always 9-3 with his hands, and they have national championships. Uh, and I agree. He said, I think 9-3 is easier to teach, which I totally agree with. But I also am quick to disregard someone's what I would call bad habits with their hands. Like I know people who drive it like just just beyond noon and just before noon, like their hands are right at the top.
Yep.
I know people who move their shuffle. I know people who do all sorts of crazy shit with their hands. But if it translates through everything to the floor, to the ground smoothly, I don't correct them generally because that tells me that they have a feel for what that like I'm going to do them more bad than good by trying to change their entire understanding
I
of
never thought of
whatever they're
that.
doing.
Yeah.
So if it's bad, I correct it right away. But I didn't have anybody that was like, we need to talk about this today. But that tells me you did.
Right. I just think
Because
it's
if you misinterpreted it, if you interpreted it, not misinterpreted, if you interpreted it, this is choppy and bad and chaos, then we need to fix it.
well, so the way I interpreted it is that they were less comfortable with the car moving around because they didn't have a good reference of like which way the wheel was facing at that particular moment. So they were like
Yeah.
hesitant to have the car moving around underneath them because the steering wheel felt like chaos. But they didn't understand why it felt like chaos. They didn't even realize that their hands are doing like chaotic things on the wheel. They just
Yeah.
like in their brain, they're like, this is at capacity. Right, but they didn't understand why. That's why I think like taking a focus, like having somebody like pay attention to what you're doing, it is super beneficial to somebody who's in a position to have that brought into their attention.
Agreed. I just thought it was interesting he pointed that out because while messy hands drive me nuts. Sometimes you can tell it's working and it's fine and I don't need to go there. We need to talk about something else like slaloms or something.
Yeah. I to me like the hand position thing is such like a fundamental. Like, I think if you're building, like, good foundations where, like, you have a relaxed because we only interact with the car through, like, a couple means, right? It's just, like, our feet and our hands, right? And that's and,
In
like,
your butt.
yeah, and your butt, but, like, that's not really necessary. It's like sim racing has at least shown me, right? So, like, to me, like, most of
Your
the
eyes.
you don't even need to see. Come on, get out of here. Um uh, but, like, to me, the way your hands are interacting with the wheel is, like it's such, like, a foundational thing, like, if you have good interaction with your hands on the wheel, then everything else is easier, so, like, if you're death gripping the wheel, you have less feel for the car, right? But if you have a nice light grip of the wheel, like, just enough where you're in control of the car, you have so much more information on what the car is doing. If your hands have
Yep.
a good reference of the 9 and 3, then when things get wild, it's fine. Like you have so much more control over the car and like so much more confidence that you didn't even realize that you could have been missing before by just having good like habits of hands on the wheel. And those things you don't just decide to do them. You have to build them into habits. So that's why I always bring that up like right away is because those are good habits to build that once you build like the earlier you build those habits, the more benefit you get from those habits, like, as you're, like, progressing through your motorsports journey.
Dude, what if driver school, like street driver school, taught this stuff?
Oh, it should.
Everyone would be so good at driving.
I bet they do in like Germany.
I bet they do in, I was going to say Scandinavia, like Sweden.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Finland. Thank you. Yes, someone in live chat.
yeah,
Carlos said in live chat. Finland. That's why Kimi Räikkönen's so fast. He's Finnish, right?
yeah, and they drive in the snow all the time.
Ah, we should be teaching this stuff. DJ, we should start a driving school. Oh wait, we did. Sort of.
Hopefully, I mean, thanks to Mike Rasny.
Rasny,
I,
yeah.
I was like stumbling on like how his name was spelled. So thank you to Mike for having us come out because that's not something I would have thought of like a way for us to because um I'll get approached, but especially Tom will get approached to for coaching in autocross. And at a weekend rate, it doesn't make sense for like a single person, but for like a group of people, it absolutely makes sense. So in the future, if your region is doing a test and tune and you think you can get 8 individuals sectioned off to want Tom and I to come out and coach at that event, I think this is something that we're open to do like moving forward and doing again because the benefit that we saw in the interaction with the students and the feedback like afterwards, I think it's really useful. And I think we're providing value and I had fun. And Tom, you had fun?
I had fun.
Yeah.
The last part that I had so much fun with, sorry to cut you off,
Yeah, go ahead.
from the day when the day finished at 4 o'clock, we spent the rest of the night like hanging out. And it was just like a bunch of autocrossers. I knew a lot of them in passing. I didn't know some of them. I knew some of their names and I had never like actually met them before. And it was so cool. It was so nice to just like hang out with people, autocrossers specifically, again.
Yeah.
And just like I'm I'm one of the peers. I'm one of the guys. Just like we're hanging out in the parking lot after. It was so fun.
Yeah, I miss
So
I
thank you
missed
to
that.
the Tri-State Sports Car Club for not only inviting us out, but also letting us be part of the event.
Yeah. So it again, if you're having a test and tune, your region's having a test and tune or something like that, please send us an email and we'll figure out whatever logistically needs to happen for us to be there. Our weekends are pretty busy, but maybe we can figure out something that will work. So if it works, cool. If not, then maybe next year. But yeah, it's definitely something that we want to do again.
And if not, I mean, I feel like I should say this. I've worked for Evo School since I was 17 and Starting Line School since it started in 2014 or something. And both of those are highly effective. They're highly like if you can't find us or you can't find a way to get us, one of those schools is still going to find you a lot of information. So
Yep.
look into it.
I think Steel Cities did a school and they had like Alex Peel and them like running it and like anything that Alex Peel could tell you is like basically gold. So like I'm sure that school I heard a bunch of good feedback from that school as well. So yeah. Anytime you can have somebody evaluate what your driving is, I don't care how good you are, like it's going to be useful. Like when you put two brains or in this case it was three brains together like on a single person's driving. So the driver, me, and then you.
Oh,
Yeah, Tom was looking at me confused. Um, so you put three brains at like a single task, and like critically think about like, okay, how could this get better? Like chances are like that person's gonna be better afterwards.
yeah.
And we can chase that alone by ourselves for a long time and then not notice something that somebody else could notice like instantly. So, all right. Dang, Tom, we're already an hour and 24 minutes in.
I was going to say, I think we should, in lieu of doing an email this week or any emails this week, we talked about a lot of like raw driving information. If you have questions, comments, thoughts, like if we provoked literally the smallest thought, please either email us at podcast@lizardbrain.life or join our Discord server and ask there, because there's no way we talked about all that stuff and no one had a single thought or question.
Right.
There's no way.
There's no way. So if yeah, if you want to, if you're like, what did Tom just say? And you're like trying to like get out your like pen and paper, whatever, no need. It's in the description of the podcast. whether you're watching on YouTube or if you're just downloading the podcast, from some app or something. I
In New Zealand?
Yeah. Hey, listen, all 3 listeners, in New Zealand, can one of you write in an email? I need to know why. Maybe somebody's just on a VPN and they're just, like, messing with us.
Yep.
So, but yeah, we have a couple, international listeners, like, all over the world, just, like, in different places, but I I don't to my knowledge, we haven't gotten an email from, somebody, that's, like, outside of, like, Canada or the US. So if you're listening, international listener, please send us an email so we can all meet you. So
Right. No
I
pressure.
just think it would be cool.
Yeah.
So it's like, wait, why did you find this podcast and why are you tuning in? That's kind of cool to me.
It was for the conspiracies, I'm sure, right?
Obviously, yeah, they're like, ooh, I want to listen to this American conspiracy podcast.
Right.
So there's probably some other podcasts that you can check out. All right, Tom, do we just want to wrap up?
I think so. What are you doing this weekend? Oh, I got questions. Are you going to autocross this weekend?
I am on Saturday.
Saturday. What are you driving?
I'm gonna drive with Peter Schnorr. For some reason, we're not driving an SSC car. We're driving his daily driver, which is it's a GR86.
I was going to ask if Peter got a GR86. Okay, so is it a D Street car or is it just like a daily driver with no tires or anything?
It's a daily driver with tires. I don't think it has like sway bars or anything, so should be fun.
It should be. I hope it turns better than the last one you drove. Well, no, the last
No.
one you drove was mine.
So
So I hope it drives better than the previous one.
Yours turned a lot, as it turned out. Turned out. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna drive that, and then on Sunday, since I've never driven a fast car at pit race before, I've only ever driven like really slow cars. My coworker and buddy Mike Kubiak is letting me drive with him for a time trial event that's at pit race. Dude, we're gonna be hot lapping this car. It goes the session I'm in, the session he's in, the session I'm in, the session he's in for like four sessions in a row. Now
Oh,
it's
that poor car.
it's a time trial, so like I only need to do like a lap or two, like probably only like one. We're on Nexon, so like I don't know exactly how that's gonna play out. But I'm gonna get fast car practice at pit race because the next time I drive on that track will be in a GT4 Cayman. And I've only ever driven slow cars there, and the track's probably a lot different at like speed because there's a lot of corners in a slow car where you're like, that's basically not even a corner, which would
Yeah.
turn into a corner in a fast car. So really, really thankful for Mike. Mike's been thrashing on the car trying to get ready for this event. Like he's had like problem after problem after problem. He thinks he's got all the problems figured out. We went and got lunch in the Corvette today. So fingers crossed that it's all set. And I appreciate Mike's effort to really he's really coming in clutch, like helping me get that like last second one lap practice. I really appreciate it.
That sounds fun. Okay, so I was looking up stuff because I had my whole calendar built. Build your calendar, clown. You.
He's talking to
I
you,
was pointing at
audience.
DJ, not you, not you, audience. No. So this weekend was WRL at Road America, but I guess I didn't update the podcast. But our Cayman for the Bridgestone WRL program got crashed, basically totaled at Mid Ohio a couple weeks ago. So we're not going to be at Road America. We should be at Charlotte in a couple months, but regardless, I need something to do this weekend, and I found that the Steel Cities Autocross, and I found the road race. And I thought I saw time trial as a part of that weekend,
Yep.
and I had forgotten you told me about that. So if anyone's going to the autocross on Saturday and has an open seat or knows of someone who might want a co-driver at that event, let me know. That'd be fun.
I'm sure we can find you a car,
'Cause
Tom.
There's only 40 cars entered though. I scrolled the thing and there's not like any immediate friend that would be like, oh, it's okay to go ask them. And I don't really like ask for co-drives, but
You want to drive a stalker?
yeah. Well, let me look at the forecast first. Is it going to be raining?
I
or
don't
some
know. I
Crazy
have no
shit?
idea. I haven't looked at it yet.
We'll figure this out. But I would like to. I'm hoping to come out across Saturday, if nothing else, and then maybe I'll hang out because I saw. Not only is it like a race weekend, but there's also a track night on Thursday. Dude, I was like, what if I just go camp at Pit Race all weekend and
That
do the
sounds
track
so
night
much fun.
Thursday? Just like hang out Friday, autocross Saturday.
The track night's on Thursday?
Yeah, it's like one day early.
Why is it on
Otherwise, it'd be good.
Thursday? Maybe there's like a test session on Friday, so they can't do it on then.
Yeah, I'm sure it's because it's a majors, I think, like an SCCA national.
Yeah, it's gonna be a busy weekend, dude. I kind of wish I don't have tires for the Fit, but that'd be fun to go do the track night in the Fit, even though it's like a Fit, like at Pit Race.
Yeah.
That if I get some slow car practice before I get some fast car practice.
Don't bother. I don't know. Oh man, a Fit at Pit Race is just
It might be
brutal.
flat through T1. You think it's flat? Probably not. It's probably a
It
lift.
wouldn't be flat,
probably
but
be a
just
lift.
if you haven't been to Pit Race, it has two like let's say 45-mile-an-hour
They're like
hairpins,
second gear turns.
and they're both uphill on exit. So if you don't have power, that track just falls apart. And it's such a fun track, but if you're in a Fit, like I'm sorry, it's just not going to be the same.
Yeah, I was telling Mike, I'm like, hey, this is gonna be the first time I accelerate up the hill after turn 4 or 5 or whatever
Yeah.
turn it was.
Yeah.
He said it like it loosens up a little bit at like the top of the hill, like when you
It
have
does.
power. And I was like, well, that's something I've never experienced before.
Nope, my Camaro was rowdy up that hill, and my original Honda Fit race car or Honda Civic race car was not. It's brutal. Uh,
But it would be cool to go to the track night and then work remote on Friday, just like laptoping in like my tent or whatever, or like I'd go up to the
Yep.
clubhouse or whatever. And
Yeah, they got like cool clubhouse.
yeah, exactly. And then just like do a work day. And then when I'm done, just like close the laptop at like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and then just like be at the racetrack. That'd be so cool.
Should we? Maybe we will. Stay tuned.
Maybe, yeah. Well, no, I don't think I can do that because I'm about to spend like more than a week away from home. So I probably need to and want to spend time with Christine. So that's probably
Good
that's
call.
probably what's tilting me into the not spend 5 days at a racetrack. But that does sound fun
Sure.
though, because then we could hit up the carts. I'd go so broke just from the carts. So
Gotta get like a sponsorship at a kart track. Don't even ask for money, just ask for free karting.
I've gotten something like that in the past from High Voltage, which is like the local kart track. Like it's literally like 3 minutes from where I work, which is cool.
Sure.
So
Someday.
go to the High Voltage karting; they're awesome. Cha cha cha.
Sure.
It
Just
just
earn
sounds
that
like
key.
whatever. Yeah.
Burn that key. Boo boo.
Boo boo.
right. Well,
All right,
cool.
Tom. You wanna end the show?
Yep, let's take it out.
Okay.
Hey, everyone that was at our school this weekend. It was the coolest experience to have our own Lizard Brain school. We appreciate you for coming out. For the rest of the year, we love your hair. We hope you win.